Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for having me in your church tonight. First of all, I would like to use some pictures I brought to introduce myself, actually to show you where I come from, how it all started before I start my talk, if you don't mind.
Well, you have to wait till it comes up.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this is the village where I grew up. That's the church of the village where I grew up in France. It's a small village where about 700 people living in that village. It's about, if you see where Paris is, it's west of Paris, about an hour toward Normandy or Brittany. So it's not very far from Paris, but it's very different life, as you can tell. So I grew up on a farm, so those are fields of wheat. So you can recognize, right? Jeez. Breaks my heart. Oh, this was the first. Before I knew I would be talking with angels and other beings, I called it cocotte because it's like a hen. So we say cocotte in French. And that was my little cocotte, and we were talking. I was talking to her many times. That's how I started. So at the age of 11, well, I was always, when I was 4, I asked my parents to do music, and of course they said, what, no music here, you'll be like everybody else working on the farm. And I was stubborn and persistent enough. They let me do the piano. So I was singing, and that was my piano teacher right there at the piano. And that was a concert we were doing at the age of 11 years old in Germany. And that's the same. So this is in the farm where I grew up. And this, you have the little house of my dog. And that was my dog. My dog is very special to me. And he's the second being I was talking with. The first was Cocotte, and then it was Tatane. So this dog was, in France, unfortunately, people get a dog during the fall, and when it's time to have fun in the summer, and the dog gets too much, they go with the dog in the car, and then somewhere they just drop him. That happens a lot. I don't know if it's all over Europe, but in France it happens a lot, unfortunately, and still today. When I heard that that the mayor of the village had found that dog, they brought him in the little city hall of the village, so to speak. And my dad, who was involved in the council of the village, told us that there was a dog found, and if nobody will take care of him, they will send him to a shelter, and maybe the poor dog will just go to the light, right? So I went with my bicycle from the farm to the heart of the village. I saw the dog, and we immediately, because they said this dog is crazy. That's how they said he's a crazy dog. But when we met, too crazy together, we resonated. And I left my bicycle there, and I came back with the dog, which you can bet my parents were very pleased. Right. But anyway, this dog, when I had, later on when I'm going to talk about my IANDS and everything, this was the really first, he was not a dog for me, he was a human being. When he was a human, we were really communicating, and I was telling him everything that I couldn't share with my parents, with my family, with my relatives at the times, because they would have, if I had told them what happened to me, what I saw during my IANDS, they would of course, think I'm completely nuts. So I couldn't share with nobody. So the only two things I could talk with was looking at the sky, looking at the clouds, and I would get a lot of answers from the clouds. And at the time where you still had clouds in the sky, right? We didn't have chemtrails at the time. So you could, when you look at the sky, you still see clouds. So I was, every time, what I would do is that I would ask a question, whatever was in my mind, whatever was bothering me, and I would look up and watch that cloud. I'd just focus on one cloud, and then the cloud would form something that would give me the answer I needed to receive. That's how I was doing. And then with my dog, we would go hiking in the plains, and we would just talk together, So that was really, he's very important for me, and he's that important that there is an entire chapter in my book where I talk about him. So later on, I was a piano teacher. So most of my pupils were forced by the parents to learn piano, because usually what I've realized is the child, most of the time, if you have 20 pupils, probably there'll be one that really wanted to do music, and the other ones are parents who didn't have the opportunity because maybe their parents didn't have the finances to offer them, or didn't let them for whatever reason. So because they didn't have the opportunity, they forced their kids to do it for them, but the kids they don't want to do it. So I had those kids, and I had to find a way to motivate them. So what I would do is the best thing I taught them is to make their piano their friend. I said, what are the odds you'll be a virtuoso playing in a symphonic orchestra? Probably 0 to none, right? So you might as well make it your friend and share your emotions. Like if something happened at school, if somebody bullied you at school, and if you're angry or whatever, or sad because a teacher gave you a bad grade or whatever happened to you, just go to your piano at night and communicate with it and play whatever. It doesn't have to be pretty. You play whatever you want, and then you will release that anger or whatever that emotion was that you need to release. And after, the parents would tell me very often that they knew, without talking to their kid, they knew from what they were playing at night, in the evening, what kind of emotion they had endured during the day. And then that was during a musical comedy. I would do to motivate them, because I noticed that some of them were very good for other things than just music. Some were good for singing, playing the piano. So some were good for singing, dancing, and some were very like comics. So I created a musical comedy every year, and we would rehearse and play in front of many thousands of people at the end in the town next to the village. So that's one of the. That was later on in Paris when I was doing acting school. That was when I was in Japan in 2007. I didn't meet with Dr. Masarumoto, but I met with his team there, and they took 3 of my first 3 CDs, which were Voyage of the Soul, Soaring with the Angels, and Dolphins, A Message of Love. And they did what they had to do with it, like they played 24 hours, and they sent me the book of all the crystals, and that's one of the pictures of those 3 CDs played on repeat for 24 hours. Well, that was later on when I was living in my apartment in Paris, and I was starting to compose music with some people who wanted to be pop singers. So I was working with many of them, and we were writing songs. This was during the acting school. We had to do a big event in Paris, and I was dancing the waltz. This is the cathedral. Correct, yeah. This is the cathedral where, this is from where I was born. I was born in Chartres. And this is the cathedral. And this is the labyrinth of the cathedral. Now, when you go to Chartres, if you ever go to France, don't miss that opportunity. But I'm going to tell you more about how not to miss this, because usually, you see the chairs in the side. Usually, when you go there, the chairs are on top of the labyrinth, so you cannot walk the labyrinth. There is only some period in the summer, or sometimes on a Friday morning, I believe. But it changes sometimes. So you have to make sure when you go there, if you ever go there, make sure it's the day where they have the chairs removed, so you can experience the labyrinth. And you have to experience the labyrinth barefoot. And believe me, people take their time, so nobody will rush you, cut you off or anything. It's a very sacred place, and people who do that labyrinth, it's incredible, because at some point of the labyrinth, you will levitate, or you will have the sense that some power is lifting you up. I had my mom do it barefoot, and she could not believe, because she's not really easy believer. But she asked me, say, is it normal? At some point, at several points, I felt like something were lifting her, and I said, yeah, it is normal. It's very, very, very powerful, and it's not only powerful in the center; it's powerful in some areas as you progress the labyrinth. So if you ever go to France and go to Chartres, make sure it's the day you're there. It's the day where the chairs will be removed, so you can experience that. Because it's not in every cathedral you can have the opportunity to walk the labyrinth. That was in Tehachapi with my mom when she came to visit me. That was in where I always say Palm Springs for people who don't know, but for you it's more close to you. It's in the Alcobendas sand dunes between Yuma and Brawley, like El Centro, Brawley, and Yuma, the Alcobendas sand dunes. And this was I love to go there because I used to give spiritual tours there, where there is a part of the dunes are very sacred. Well, to me, at least they are very sacred, where you can still feel the blueprint of the dolphins and the whales. Yeah. So, and I used to do those tours. I don't do that right now, but I used to bring people, and some people say, we just want to see the sand dunes, that's it, the rest, it's a bit wacko for me. But, and I love those people because usually those are the best, because they believe it, they're in there anyway. And when we were just walking down, and they felt it without me telling them, and they broke through. They were in tears, because it's very, very powerful. Yeah, very powerful, that place. It used to be the bottom of the ocean, so it's normal that you still feel the blueprint, the energy of the book. That's in Palm Springs. If you ever go to Palm Springs, I highly suggest that you go to this place. It's called the Coachella Valley Preserve, and it's in Thousand Palms. And when you go there, there is two oases, a natural oasis created by the San Andreas Fault. So when you go there, you have the first oasis, then you walk in the desert for like 20 minutes, and you arrive to the second oasis. And that one is very powerful because there is what I call the sacred cathedral of trees. It's like you have palm trees with the shape of a cathedral, and it's really, really, really powerful if you connect with the trees. They are very talkative. Oh, that's in the book too, when I talk about, well, the one on the top left is when I was in Greece. I've been in Greece many times. It's one of my favorite country to visit because the people are so nice. And the food is good. And in the bottom right is when I was giving a conference concert in Belgium a couple of years ago. That was in IANDS in 2012 in Scottsdale, where I brought people on stage. And I brought that picture because of the orb you can picture on top of the picture. Yeah, somebody was in the audience and was able to take, I don't know how many dozens of pictures she took, and all of them had lots of orbs, so that's one of them. That's in Palm Springs. That's the vortex of light. And I used this cover to do the CD Soaring with the Angels. And it started by having the channel of light, the channel of light on the two palm trees. And that's the one we use for the CD cover. But then it did that vortex. So that's powerful, and that's if you're familiar with Palm Springs, you know we have an angel, the angel on the mountain, what we call at the entrance of Palm Springs when you drive on the I-10. So whether you see it really well from when you drive from Phoenix to Los Angeles, and right where you see the windmills, and you look at the San Jacinto Mountain, you see the angel right on the edge, right on the mountain. And this vortex is right on that corridor of the I-10. And I think that's it. So now I would like to talk about my experience. When I was 12 years old, back in France, of course, my parents, we were driving, and then we had a car accident. I was ejected, came back down the road from what people witnessed, and then the car, my parents' car, brought me into a circle and stopped. The tire stopped at my right ear. My face was a mess. My eyes were almost not eyes anymore. Even the doctors said they couldn't understand why they were able, but they said it was a miracle that they didn't completely popped out, because this one actually was pretty much that. But they said because of a little tiny ligament that, like the doctor said, it was a miracle because something must have hold that so it doesn't break, because that was impossible. Anyway, he was able to fix it. And when I had my car accident, I was, of course, laying on the ground. And I went from the coma to the deep coma and to the near-death experience. Well, to the out-of-body experience and the near-death experience is exactly those four phases. So coma, that happened just, I guess, I don't know how many minutes after the accident, where I started to hear all the people who saw the accident, including my dad. And everybody was screaming, was in total shock. My dad thought I was dead because he mentioned that too many times. And he felt so guilty because he thought he just killed his son. And me, who was there on the ground, I had pain for him. He had pain for me, but I had more pain for him. Because I just like, if you knew where I am, I feel nothing. I'm in the light. I was already in the light. Maybe not in the total light, but I was already lighter. I didn't feel the body. So I was actually, from where I was, I remember really, I was actually praying for him and praying for all those people who were crying. And I want to take a moment to share with you, how many of you, hopefully none, but how many of you had a person that you loved who were in a coma? So sometimes, usually the instinct, when we have what I've observed through my life, is you have a loved one in a coma. You absolutely want that person to come back to you. So what do? You go to that person, you share your emotion, you cry, you talk to that person, please, 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 you beg that person to come back. And usually that's the worst you can do. Because usually when you do that, you basically invite the person to go. And I'm going to explain that more in details because it's very important. It was very important for me, so I believe if it ever happens to you, at least you know what to do based on my experience. Everything was sound. So imagine somebody, I'm here, this is the scene of the accident. I'm laying right here. Imagine somebody is not entered the church yet, they're at the door. Mentally, or crying, but there's no sound, or mentally sad, or mentally worried. It will be as if I am talking to you right now. You will hear, I was hearing it. Every feeling, every feeling that the person was feeling, it was translated into sound, as if I'm talking to you right now. I'm right in front of you. So imagine when the person is not far from me and crying and talking about what happened to me and everything, it's amplified 100 times. It's extremely loud. So now imagine when the person who loved me the most is right next to me and beg me to come back. It's so unbearable. It's actually unbearable. You can't take it. So what you do is you want to go. Because the sound is such, and when you have somebody in the coma, you choose, you make that person, you invite, you're between there and here. Between the light, where you feel light, and here, where you feel the gravity, the misery, the heaviness, the suffering. So, when you have that choice to make, and then you have plenty of people coming with more heaviness, that doesn't invite you to come back to the heaviness. So you choose to go towards the light because that's where you feel better. Again, I'm not saying it happens to everybody who is in the coma. That would be wrong. I cannot talk for other experience. It's based on my own experience. So I am sure if that's what I experienced, other people in the coma would experience the same thing. When the ambulance arrived, the nurse who was in the ambulance, I think it was an angel sent. to save me from going to the light. Because my dad insisted heavily to come to the ambulance, inside the ambulance, to the hospital. And I mentally talked to the nurse and I said, I don't want him. I don't want him. Because I knew if he had stayed in that ambulance, I knew what I would have, I couldn't take it. I couldn't take it. It was too painful. I mean, it was too loud and too painful. So I could not take it. So the nurse got it. And he told my dad, your son just said he doesn't want. And my dad reacted to him very angrily, saying, what the you're talking about? He cannot talk. So he tried to stay. He forced himself in, I'm sure, knowing my dad. And the nurse finally succeeded to kick him out. As soon as he kicked him out, he came back to me and he said, now you're okay. And as soon as he said that, whoop, I was out completely and above, floating above the ambulance. And I remember that very clearly. And then, this is when this all started. The tunnel near-death experience started, where my feet, I was floating my feet forward, and it was going as fast as I can remember. It was going so fast. The tunnel was not that narrow, it was pretty large, because sometimes it was not an alley of angels, but sometimes you would see a very huge angel on the right, then on the left, and then on the right. And then one of them told me, you're okay. And that really it made me all goosebump again when I think of it, because it's that moment I can never forget. It's graved in my being for eternity. And then and then also in the tunnel I saw the beings of light. So the beings of light, some people say it's like the orbs. But the orbs are usually round, like a circle. And the beings of light I have seen were more like a kidney pool kind of shape. And they were going from white to middle gray, different variation. And the texture sounded more like cotton, but some were heavy, like you couldn't see through. Some were very thin that you could see through. So it was different type of texture, of density. And they were all over the place. Then when I asked later on, not during that experience, but a couple of years later when I asked what it was, what were they? And they told me that they are everywhere, all the time. So when you think sometimes you're alone, you cannot be alone, because you have probably thousands of them in your house at all times. And they are absolutely everywhere in the world, everywhere. And when I asked what's the purpose of it, and they told me it is their usage is like if you're going to hit something hard and then you're going to put a sponge in between, it absorbs the shock. So their usage is basically to absorb like a sponge the negative, violent emotion that could disturb the balance of the world. So if you think the world is in a mess right now, imagine what it would be if they were not here. So they do their part, they do their best, but they cannot do the work for us too. So that was it. I arrived at the hospital. I remember when I was still floating above the ambulance, we arrived at the hospital, and I heard a nurse somewhere, and at that moment I followed that nurse. So I don't know how that happened, but I followed that nurse from the hospital, and she was screaming that I was dead. And I remember saying, I'm not dead. and anyway, after they took me and I remember they inject something in me, and then after I don't know, I don't remember anything after that. I only woke up one day, and all I remember is the nurse said, it's a miracle, it's a miracle. He woke up, and then when the doctor came to my room, he was so angry. He was angry because it was not possible, because they thought I was not going to make it. Maybe they thought I was not dead, but they thought I would not make it. So it was disturbing his beliefs so much that I can remember his voice. He was so angry to know that I woke up. Anyway, to each his lesson. That was my first experience of the near-death experience at age 12. A year later, when I was 13, this is when I was taught how to use the gift that was given to me that I was not aware of through music. So it started that we were watching TV, like most families, at night, in the evening, after dinner, and there was this the variety show with singers, and there was a French singer called Dalida. And suddenly the angels are telling me, go to your piano and play Dalida's name on the piano. So I just naturally attributed a note to each letter, and I just started to play. And they say, play it over and over and over. So I started to play and play and play and play. So the name is very short, 6 letters, so it's kind of repetitive. And I started to play. And maybe about 5-7 minutes later, it's like a window popped up in the universe or somewhere. It just popped up. And I was able to see the real Dalida. A person completely different than what you would see on TV. A person in distress, a cry for help, lots of misery, lots of distress, lots of negativity around her. And it didn't really make sense, because when you're 13 years old, when you watch somebody happy on TV, you think that person is really happy, right? And anyway, so that was it. That was my first awakening. But I didn't do anything with it, because actually I was afraid, even at the age of 13, that I had violated a universal law to see the soul of somebody, and I didn't even know if I had the right to see that. So I almost felt guilty of having seen that. So I kind of shut it down, and I don't know if it was many years later, 2 years later, when finally we learned that she committed suicide. So when that happened, it was like a bomb falling onto me, because I completely felt the guilt, because they gave me the opportunity to see her distress, and I didn't know how to use it, what to do with it. And then it was real, because she committed suicide. So that traumatized me for a long time, a very, very long time. And it traumatized it. I was so afraid of that gift that I shut it down until the age of 30. At the age of 30, my doctor said I needed to have a tiny surgery. Say, in and out, no big deal, nothing. The blessing in disguise happened. The nurse made a mistake. gave me a dosage of anesthesia way too much. It was like, she was like pumping all the time. So what? And it was way overboard. Until I remember only when the surgeon said, he's blacking out, and they started to panic and they sent me somewhere, and then I don't remember. I only remember when I woke up the next day, well, which I believe is the next day, I'm not even sure. And I said, what am I doing here in that bed? I'm supposed to be in and out, right? And I started to want to move, and I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, waist down. Touching my legs was as if I was doing this. Actually, I was not even feeling that there was something here. It was just feeling like air. And till, I didn't even feel that it's not like I could pitch myself and I didn't feel it. I didn't even feel there was a matter here. It was just like air. The blessing of that moment is I knew when that happened. I have never felt sorry for myself, blamed the doctor, blamed the nurse from doing it. I have never had any negativity towards nobody, not even myself, because I knew at that very moment when I realized I was paralyzed that I had co-created that myself. I had did that to myself. Because and right away when I said that, I said, I'm so sorry, I promise that I will never do that again. And do what? And when I said that, I felt from my plexus solar, it was like what I call the breath of God. It was like, and it felt very good. And I knew and I knew I had a great chance to walk again when I felt that breath of God, what I call it. Because I was completely honest with myself. I knew that I was running away from the age of 13 to 30 from my gift, from fear. I was running away. So the best blessing, gift that God could give me is to stop me from running away. When I realized that, then that was released and forgiven, and I was able, that's my belief, that I was able to walk again, which took me about 8 months later to be able to walk again. It was never 100% perfect since then, because since then I never being able to hold my back completely straight or things like that. There was always a few weaknesses, but at least I was able to walk. At least I am able to walk. So when that happened, I can tell you that after the age of 30, I said, that's it, no more running away. So I found a medium in Paris, and she helped me for 1 year to trust the communication I had with angels, which I was not trusting. So it's like going to a psychic when you're yourself psychic. And you can see you for yourself when you're just so afraid, or you think you cannot see anything because you're too dumb, and you go to say psychic for it, when actually you have that gift. And I see a lot of people like that who have the gift and who refuse it, to acknowledge it. So that was at the age of 30, so that's what I did. After 35, I came to the United States. I always knew I wanted to live in America. Since the age of 7, I knew I wanted to move. it was California, but I knew it was San Francisco, so I knew I wanted to go to California. And it happened when another French singer called Julien Clerc had that song called California, which in French is La Californie. When I heard that song, my heart exploded of joy, and I was jumping up the ceiling, and I didn't know why. I didn't even know what was California, where it was on the map, and I didn't care. I just knew I'm going to California. And I went there, of course, many times. And finally, at the age of 35, everything was... I'm not going to tell those details because those are not important for the topic of today. But every situation fit. Everything unfolded perfectly, so it was the right time to come to America. Because I never really felt French in my core. So I remember when I first came to America at the age of, in France we're not like you guys. We don't work too much there. You work a little bit and you have a lot of vacations. So. That's what I did. My first job at the age of 19, and I was in a record company in Paris, and I worked maybe 1 month or 2 months, and I already had a week vacation paid. And so I took 2 weeks. Why not? And actually I stayed 3 weeks, because I didn't want to leave. But I remember when I flew from, that's a story to an anecdote, to when I flew from Paris to San Francisco, when I landed, I cried, but I cried my heart out because I knew I was home. I was more home than with my parents or anywhere in France. That was home. And it's still home. It will always be home because I don't see where else I could live. And so after that I became American. I got the naturalized American, and at the time there was our French president who even asked us that wanted to pass a bill that he would not allow anymore the dual nationality. And I said, bring it on, because if you ask me to choose, I am American. Anyway, that didn't pass, but in my core, I feel more home here and more in tune with American people than with the French people. That's for sure. I've always felt that way. And most of the French people, they don't get it. Why? Anyway. So at the age, when I came here, the angels told me I was in LA, then I came to Palm Springs, California. And the angels told me, you need to start to do a meditation, musical meditation. I said, musical meditation? What's that? And I said, they said, well, you need to find a place where you can give your meditation. And I was freaked out because I said, I don't even know what you mean. And they say, well, it's okay, because all you have to do is bring your equipment and do nothing else. So I remember I knocked the door to different places, and one time I knocked the door to that church. The lady came out, opened the door, she yelled like an hysteric. She yelled saying, God heard us, God heard us. And she went to her husband in the church office, and really, honest to God, they were literally writing a letter to the angels because they needed somebody to help them with the music in the church. And here I am knocking the door. So she said, you're angel sent, you do whatever you want. Because to do So that's what I did. I did the meditation. So we did the meditation, and before doing the meditation, I was, because it's okay to be stubborn, right? So I was not trusting completely what I had to do. I said, so you mean you're gonna bring people, and I'm going to be on stage with my equipment, a microphone, and I don't know what's going to happen. So I asked them kindly. I said, can we just do a rehearsal at home? And this is really true. And they said yes. So I put the headphone, put the microphone, and I played whatever, and I started, and an hour and a half later, that was done. I had no clue what had happened, because I didn't record it, but I knew it had been very powerful, because I probably woke my house maybe 15 minutes by crying my heart out, because it was so powerful. I was releasing the power. But then after I said, yeah, okay, that happened that time, but what tells me it's going to happen again? So anyway, we did the meditation. I brought people on stage, and then it happened, and I left. And I came back to the church about 2 weeks later, and a lady at the entrance, the usher of the church, cried, the miracle man, this is the miracle man. And they all started to come next to me, and I said, what are you talking about? That night, there was 4 healing and 1 cure. And I remember the healing were, mild pain, what I call it. It's like people have a shoulder problem, they have to take several aspirins or whatever, painkillers every day, but it was not more than that. It was not like life-threatening. But they got healed that day. Since that day, they never had to take anything else. But that lady in particular, we call a cure because it's documented, so I can call it that way. She had a dorsal spine completely damaged. The discs of the dorsal spine were damaged, so damaged that she was doing a catering job, and she had to quit the catering job because it was too painful. She couldn't hold those trays anymore of food. So she quit, and she found an office job somewhere. And she was living like an hour and a half from Palm Springs, more towards LA. And she came to the meditation, and the first meditation happened in 3 phases. Like, first phase is where we give forgiveness, the second phase is I forgot what it was, and then there's the third phase. And between each phase, it was maybe a few seconds of silence. And during the second silence, after the second phase, the second sequence, we can say, of the meditation, she tried to leave, saying, I got enough. It's time, because I have to drive back an hour and a half, so it's time to leave. And then she said, well, you started your third sequence too quick. I didn't have time to leave. And then I didn't want, by respect, I didn't want to disturb the audience, because it was a full house that day. So she stayed, and she said, well, what the heck now? I'm stuck for another probably 45 minutes. I better sit well. And she put herself, and she accepted to stay. And she said at that moment she felt something. But she didn't know what. It didn't occur to her something more, but she felt something happening in her dorsal spine. She left, and then the next day, the next few days, she helped somebody move, and she didn't even. She tells me she even forgot she had pain, because she had no more pain. So she even forgot she had pain. It's only after that she realized she was not having pain anymore. So she went to go back to her chiropractor, who had suggested to do a surgery, even though he said it would never be the same. She would still be not able to go back to her job, and it doesn't mean because they will do surgery that she won't have pain anymore. It might just do nothing. to help her. Anyway, 3 weeks after the meditation, she went back to the chiropractor saying that she had no more pain. So they took another X-rays, and the dorsal spine the discs were normal. So I got that. I said, all right. So that was when I was 37, 38. And then, so yeah, the meditation, healing happened after people came, and that's what I was doing there. And I was always wondering why some people are blessed, why some people are not. And even though I kind of knew the answer, I wanted more details about it. Why? I knew it had something to do with the ego, with my state of being when I played the music, because I know that if I could remember what I played, or if my ego was flattered, if I would give a concert, to put it that way, if I give a concert and my ego, and I recall that my ego was flattered after the concert and saying, "Oh, that was a good one." Usually people in the audience say, "Yeah, that was so-so today," meaning not too powerful. Why? Because I was probably still there, not completely off service. And I like to tell my personal stories. I'm not shy about it, because that's how we learn. And then when I would have the test where I have no clue what happened, I don't even know if I played for 10 minutes or too long, I think it was nothing happened. I think the music was not that good, because my ego cannot even tell me. I don't have any, I don't know. It's like, I don't know what happened. Then people tell me, "That was intense tonight." Because I was not there, of course, so I can't record it. So that's how I learned that to completely detach myself when I play, I don't want to know. That's why every time I speak, or every time I play, if I would come here to play my music for you, it would be, I don't know what. When I sit to my keyboard, put my fingers on the keyboard, I would still don't know what's going to happen. Because it's for you. And when people would say, "I want to record for today, I want to have a CD of today," I say, "No. I do not want you to record when I play for you, because I play for you today. And if you record it and listen to it tomorrow, you as a collective, you are not together anymore, so you cannot receive it the same way. And I want you to learn to record it, to be in the moment, and to live in the moment, and to record it in the moment, and to be blessed in the moment, not tomorrow or not in 3 days. Don't procrastinate. Take it now when it's offered to you." So when I do the music, that's how I do. And when I give this presentation, I never give the same talk, because I can't, because each audience has a different frequency. So as a collective, I just wait to see what I'm guided to say or not to say. So after that, okay, I'm 40 years old, all right, second ND. So here we go. I was giving a seminar in San Diego. And usually I would not talk about it. But now that we change era, now we have started revealing a lot of things out there, I think it's appropriate to start revealing the truth. So I went to San Diego to talk to in the Right Scottish Temple. And there was almost full house there, and I was talking. And at one point of the presentation, I blanked. suddenly I was not here anymore because suddenly I saw something I showed what I saw at the time. People in the audience could see I was somewhere, and it took me a few moments to center myself again to go back to my talk. When I left, I used to do San Diego, Palm Springs so many times. It's not complicated. You take the freeway, you follow. For whatever reason that day, I didn't follow. I took a different road until I realized I'm in the middle of the forest, in a tiny road. And when I realized that, the gasoline thing was like 0, and I was saying, what the hell I'm doing here? I had no clue what happened. No clue. First thing I said, well, I need to go back to get gas. So it took probably going back to the 15 towards to the 15 was because I was probably, I don't even know where I was. I was in the middle of the forest, probably, I don't know, towards Julian, or I have no clue what it was. I was lost in the middle of the forest, really. And then I came back to the 215 and I prayed the angels so I have enough gasoline. Because it was really at 0. I said, there's no way I'm going to make it. And anyway, by the grace of God, I made it to take some gas in my car. Then I'm back to Palm Springs. And about a mile before I arrived to my house, this is where it happened. Another blank. I blacked out again. And here I hit the car. Thank God there was nobody on the freeway. A truck who was behind me saw everything. He was able to tell me and to save me. He said I hit a rail. I was probably driving on the second lane, I thought 4 lanes. I hit the rail on the right, then I completely crossed all the lanes. I hit there and I rolled over 7 times. And when he stopped this truck and he came, he told me after, he said, I didn't dare to come too close because I really thought it was going to explode. So he was yelling, are you okay, are you okay, are you okay? And me, I couldn't move. I was not passed out completely yet. I was still kind of conscious. When I came back to myself, to my body, I was still in the car in the moment of the accident. But I had left someplace else for the first time. Then I came back. I remember I looked at everything and I was covered in glass everywhere. And then I heard the ambulance arrive and they started to cut the car to get me out and do what they had to do. Anyway, I go to the hospital, and there they start cleaning me and my glass and everywhere. And my hands were completely cut open everywhere. I thought I would never be able to play my music again. But I said, something else to learn. That's how I took it, actually. And then the doctors said they were giving me a lot of x-rays. I said, well, you keep doing x-rays because it's my hands. He said, no, it's not. Your hands is nothing. It's your lungs. I had punctured lungs, and they were ready to get into action, into surgery. So at one point, they were giving me x-rays, like so many, and it was crazy. And the doctor came back to my room, and he said, well, you're one of those lucky ones. It's like a miracle, because now, for whatever reason, it's shrinking. So what happened at the same time that I had my car accident? My nephew, age 9, in France, told his mom, my sister, I had a very strange dream, Mom. All I could see all night is this man laying in a hospital on the surgery table, But I could not see his head. It's as if he had no head. Because I guess the angel didn't want him to think it was probably me. So he saw a man, and he had a problem with his lungs. And he said what was beautiful, and he had two giant golden angels with wings of diamonds, wings of diamond, I don't know how you say it, and working on him. And then he was okay. And he kept asking his mom, I don't know what I saw that, and then later on, of course, we put that together. It's not too complicated, because when I had my car accident, that's when he had that dream. So he saw what happened to me. So I was able to talk to him later on, and so he tells me exactly what he saw and who had healed my lungs. And he gave me, he even draw a picture of those angels and those wings. So we researched online, some type of wings with diamonds, and he was able to say, it's more like this one, it's more like this one, and he remembered exactly. Anyway, I was still asking what happened, why did that happen? And it came very fast, the answer, when during the night, Jesus, or the silhouette of Jesus, came to me, came in the room, and he said, can you take my hand? I would like to show you something. And I must say at the time, I was not probably the most, because even though I was raised Catholic, because in France you are either Catholic or you're nothing, so it's easy. Well, it's changing, but at the time that's what he was, So, so when I came to America, I said, "Oh, because you can be something, you can choose, you can pick and choose. It's great." Anyway, so I was not at the time. I must say, I was not the most. I was kind of detached from Jesus at the time. So when he came to my room, there was a shock, first of all. But I gave my hand, and as soon as I gave my hand, it was like a blackout, and we were somewhere else. And then we were in that desert, wherever that is. And there was that big hill. There was thousands and thousands and thousands of people. People suffering, people with lots of disease, people begging for help, people dying on sight, basically. And he said, go to that hill and watch. And after I saw him being like here, and I was there on that hill, and you had a line of people who looked like misery. And I always had that question when I was a child, because again, when you're forced to be Catholic in France, right? I was forced to be Catholic. I was not asked. So usually I would provoke the priest. Bad boy was I. Because I would ask, why do we have to kneel the Virgin Mary or Jesus Christ, to respect Jesus Christ or Virgin Mary? Why do I have to kneel? And I remember I was saying, why I can respect Virgin Mary from anywhere. I can pray Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ when I drive, when I'm gardening, when I'm in the restrooms. It does not matter. It's not a disrespect. It's the intention. Why do I have to physically kneel? It was always a question, and I got a lot of slap in my face for that. When I saw from that hill people making the line, Jesus right there, his aura was so gigantic. It was like a disc with several wheels, kind of say, like big, large diameters, like it started and then there was that aura and then another aura. And it's like each wheel creating the aura was more powerful as you approach Jesus. So when the people started to come in, and when they enter that aura, they started to feel they had no strength to stand anymore. So the more they were walking closer to Jesus, the more they had no strength because the aura was attacking them to bless them. And they had no choice than surrender. And by the time they reached Jesus, then they were kneeling. So they were kneeling until they reached Jesus. And from what I saw, when he put his hand on their forehead, the healing had already been done. He was just sealing the healing. That's what I saw. So then, of course, it was my turn. And then when it was my turn, well, yeah, it was a long thing, but it would take too long to explain. Briefly, what happened that he told me that now I know what I do with my music, what happened. That when I play the music, all I do is being of service. If I do it right, it's being of service. My ego not here. And that music creates an aura. And when you have the courage to come and bathe into that aura, to surrender and bathe into that aura, economic crash. At the same time, there was a lot of transition going on. Especially those who had the opportunity to communicate with angels or after 2009, 10, 11, especially more importantly after 2012, and until recently, it was very difficult for a lot of us who were more spiritual or more spiritual oriented. DNA was changing, lots of problems to adjust to the new DNA that was being downloaded to us somehow. The communication with angels were more difficult too, because at that time it was a transition. Each of us had to learn to communicate, different ways. The way we communicated before could not happen anymore. So we had to find the new channel, if some sort, like when you're zapping on your TV and then suddenly it's bzzz, and then you're trying to find the new channel to capture. And that's what we were doing. And now I think it's back on track, even though now other beings, more from the planetary system, come. I'm told it's time to shut up, but I still have something important to say, so I'm going to try to say it anyway, briefly. The planetary, so right now, from communicating with angels, there's a place in America that I discovered 14 years ago that I'm not authorized to name the location or even say what it is, but those are beings hidden in a mountain, come from a planetary system, connected to different planets, let's say. And they are here to help us because they know we're We're in bad shape. So they have taught me a lot. And they have been actually very political oriented in what they told me. Not about America, not about only America, but about the world. They've taught me a lot about what's going on in the world. And they were hoping by the people, I'm going to try to be vague, not to be blunt and direct, and you take whatever you want to take. And the people who were chosen to govern to lead some governments, had the task had a specific mission to reveal their people. And if those people failed miserably to achieve what they were elected to do, and that comes from what I call the planetary solar system. So you can say, I'm cuckoo, wacko, I don't care. I know this is the truth, so you can reject it, take it, or whatever, meditate on it. All I'm saying is just putting it out there because I know it's the truth, or at least it's my truth. And those people told me that in our world we are so much, so now basically they are kind of taking over because they know we cannot do it. So they came to influence us so the truth can blow. Like, you know, when you have a big abscess or a pimple and it gets bigger and bigger and not pretty and it needs to come out, where you're not going to put powder to hide it. At one point you need to just blow it out. And they do that. And for them, from what they told me, and that's all I can say, this is what happened 3 days ago, happened 3 days ago. They said also that if only we could remember our power, if only we would stop judging the negative by sending out more negative. And for that, this is not them talking, it's me talking. I heard a lot of spiritual, in brackets, leaders, gurus, goddesses, who criticize, who've been criticizing for 18 months a certain person, like you can imagine, without naming it. How can you be that's me. It's just something to meditate. I'm not judging, and just something to put out there. How can you criticize and criticize somebody being negative when you send out yourself something negative? When you're spiritual and you have thousands of followers and you send out newsletters and you talk everywhere on TV and everything and you send out negativity, what do you create? How can you counter negativity with more negativity? Then you create more chaos. And if we continue that way, we're going to blow ourselves up. And the planetary system will not allow it because they don't care if we die. They care that if we blow ourselves up, it will destabilize the galaxies and the other planets. So they do that for them too. It's not just for us saying, oh, we're kind for you dumb human beings. No, they do it because, well, anyway, I don't want to get too much into that, but they taught me so much that it's like, it's hard to limit myself. All what I'm saying is, if only we could pray, whether you agree or you disagree with what happened, it does not matter. Anyway, it's done. So now either you fight, and when you fight, it's like when you have cancer, and you fight for it. When you fight, when you create a war, there is always a winner, and there is always a loser. So I've known many people who had cold disease like cancer or anything else, and who healed themselves by only creating that perfect balance within themselves and not creating that fight. And that's something that would always come up in my musical meditation when I would speak, and that I remember for those I recorded, I know that was always coming up. When I would always ask somebody who has an illness to place their hands on their illness, physical illness. But that physical illness didn't come to punish you. It comes because you co-created from so much negativity or a trauma from childhood or from the womb. A lot of people have trauma from the womb. So when you direct your hand, one of your hand, the weakest hand, let's say, when you direct it to whoever, Jesus, Virgin Mary, Buddha, whoever you want, a planet, whatever, mountain, a tree, whatever, and you put the hand on the illness, and you're able to communicate as a friend to that illness, you can move that energy, you can actually practice and create, be able to move that energy, so eventually when you really communicate well, you can ask this energy to be released because you do not no longer need it. Because an illness usually comes to teach you something. It doesn't come to punish you. When it punishes you, it's because you were not able to see why it came, and you may not have done the best thing you could have done to release it. So that's what they say. If only we could pray, we could visualize all together the collective, that we'll be okay, because we're going to be okay if we do that. But if we continue what we've seen those last days, to do those horrible things that what people do, we're not going to be okay, because we are going to be responsible for that chaos. So what they now, it seems like they want to charge me with that thing is just to talk about it and say that what happened is to say that they intervene because the humans they put in place before that were supposed to do the work failed miserably to reveal what they had to reveal. So they had to put somebody in place, whether we like it or not, that may do that for that purpose only. So if only we know that we believe in God, we trust in God, we trust that everything happened for a reason, then we should surrender and pray and visualize to help that person to do the right thing. Because if we're all sending him out negativity, that's not going to be pretty, because you may even guide him or feed him with energies that doesn't even belong to him. So it's very important at this time to start the awareness that we are all responsible and we're on the same boat on that. And praying and visualizing that we will be okay. And praying and visualizing that he's been here for the right thing, because it's not going to stop, they told me. They told me it's not going to stop. They're going to do that all over the world. They're intervening and neutralizing what they call negativity. So that's, of course, subjective, because you can, say, anyway, I don't want to talk more about this. Meditate on this, and I think that was enough.
I promised Frederic that we would have some question and answers. There will be limited question and answers, but boy, I have a lot of questions. Oh, no, we need to have it as part of the recording. That's why you're talking to the microphone.
Did you say that you were born in Chartres?
Yes.
Wow.
I was born at the hospital in Chartres. Yeah.
I've been there, And that church, that cathedral is
And I have
unbelievable.
actually played the organ, the big organ at the cathedral. Yeah,
Wow.
because I was playing piano, and also I was of service to do weddings and special events, funerals too. But I was playing the organ in the villages too, or even in my village, but also in the cathedral in Chartres. I played that. I played to many other cathedrals too, in Normandy, like Lisieux, who is a very famous cathedral, and I've played there too. It's incredible when you play those organs in those cathedrals. In your gut, it's like
they're beautiful.
it's
They're
like-
gorgeous.
It's so powerful. Hmm.
And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This was incredible. You're a wonderful person. I want to start crying. When you were talking, I almost started crying several times. So thank you so
Well,
much.
I cry a lot too. So when we cry, when I do my music, or when I'm in the moment, and it's so powerful when you let yourself surrender yourself, being in the moment, that wherever you are, hiking, wherever you are, sometimes it just moves you. You just cry of happiness. It's just you have to let it go. Or if you keep it inside, it's gonna hurt you somehow or someday. So you have to let it go. You have to release it. Yeah, share it. It's not even releasing it; it's sharing it. Yes.
Thank you for a mystical talk. It was really, really heartfelt and very sincere.
Thank you.
My direct question is, I think it's when you were younger and you were in the tunnel and you saw the beings you referred to as sponges or buffers.
Beings
or
of light. Mhm.
Now, do you feel the ones that are present everywhere, are they sentient beings with a soul, or are they energy?
Yeah, they are energies.
They're energies.
Yes, they are not just sent to you for you. They are energies that's their work, is to serve as sponges, kind of. I use the term sponge because that's the best word I found.
Okay.
But that's what they do. Yeah. So and they absorb all the negativity.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's their specific purpose.
In order to balance as best, to give us as best the opportunity to have free will.
And I thank you also for mentioning the sacred communication you had with your dog. I'm a very powerful animal person, and that really touched my heart.
There's so many other
Thank
things
you.
I forgot to talk about, like the name, why we choose the name at birth, and when you talk, there's so many things that you would need like an entire day, to cover everything I want to say, but yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking. It's been very, very powerful. My question is, you were very clear, and there was a pattern of events, and then I feel there's a gap between your meeting with Jesus and then your meeting with extraterrestrial beings, and I'm a little confused right there in that little gap.
Well, because you cannot be in detail, because those are not I stayed on topic for the near-death experience. But if you want me to tell you my story, well, we're going to be here for a week. And then I can give in details how I met with them and how it happened the first time and the second time and then the third time. But I don't have the time. I have to come back. But, you have to put them... No. Definitely, yes. I'm going to write a book about it. It's just that they haven't authorized me to talk much about it, because I could only talk about it vaguely, because they said the world, meaning the world leaders, if they knew that place would exist, they would screw it up. So they would misuse it like they always do anyway. So that's why they started to intervene, to bring a new energy so this stops for good. And this is really for your highest good from what they think, from what they've told me. So it would take time. But when they will give me the green light that once and for all we will have a government that will not screw us instead of helping us, I will be authorized to talk about it.
Okay, my question. First, I'm French, and I'm quite amazed because when she told me it was a French person, speaker, I thought the huge ego they're going to have is going to be horrible. So I was amazed. You're definitely not a French person.
Yeah, I don't feel French.
So my question was, when you were in the temple, I did not understand there was some San Diego temple.
Yeah.
What type of temple was this?
The Freemason temple.
Freemason,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
And may I ask, what was that horrifying?
I cannot talk about it.
Is it too horrifying?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. It's one of those ceremonies that
Yes, of course, yes.
So
Yeah,
it's not pretty. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
But the question, just because I'm curious, do you think that's why you ended up with this, getting lost and then...
Yeah, it has different... but, I'm not I never like to blame.
No.
So even if I saw something that is not good and they try to... It doesn't matter. What matters is I co-credit that myself. I was there talking. I was there I'm the one who saw that flash. I am the one who...
What was the flash again? I know. Okay,
Very
thank you.
cute.
We'll have a last question. Okay, I see a hand.
I really have two questions, but the short one is, how long have the extraterrestrials been here? A long time?
Well, I'm talking, yes, extremely long time.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, actually, very long time before us, even. But they were so much before us that it was probably, and that I can say, it was probably about, and maybe much more, but from what I know for sure, it was at least 100 million years. Yeah.
Okay. The second question was that you had said that we shouldn't record your music, which I'm truly disappointed we didn't get to hear you play. But, and that if we shouldn't record it because it's taking place in that instant,
No,
all of the...
no, okay. I do not refuse. I'm not like that.
Uh-huh.
But I try to teach you to live in the moment.
Okay.
Because when I come, if I had my pre-formatted concert and whoever shows up will get the same concert anyway, it doesn't matter. You can record it. But because when I play, it's for you as a collective right now. And if you record it and listen to it in 3 days, you'll be probably alone in your house listening to it, and it won't be the same because that music was done only to bless all of you as a collective.
So how is it that if we buy one of your CDs...
That's different. Those were done for that purpose.
Okay.
But when I play for you, for an audience, or when I do the music of the soul based on your birth name, it's just for you. So it's just for you. And I will never allow anybody else to listen to it unless you allow a friend to listen to it. But it's very private. If I do your music, it's your soul that I put in music. It's the reading of your soul that I put in music to align your body, your soul, your spirit in all one. It's very powerful. It's one CD for life. But it's just yours. So be careful who you let listen to it, because it's the most private thing you can share. It's your soul. You don't want to... So you have to make sure that the person who listens to it also will not use that energy to misuse it.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that's why when I create the music for the group, it's really for you. And it's just for that moment. And you have to record it, you have to learn to live in that moment and to be blessed in that moment. And that's how there were always so many healing or things taking place. And sometimes it's not a healing, it's just somebody who get a revelation that he needs to play the guitar. And then he plays the guitar, and then he plays like, he knows how to play the guitar without having any lessons. He just got the calling that he just had to grab that guitar. And he has an extremely gift. That happened too. So it's just not physical healing. It can be anything. A book you can write, a new vocation in your life, or a new country you need to go because maybe you'll meet somebody that will open new doors for you, or whatever it can be. And this can happen in those moments. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can't resist. One more question is, if I wanted to have my soul recorded in music, how do I do it?
Well, first of all, that's why I was not able, you shouldn't ask that question, because that's what I forgot to talk about.
It's okay.
No, it's just basically I use the birth name, and I always have something to say about that, because basically, briefly, the birth name that is given to you is guided, is sacredly guided. So for anyone who changed their name especially for the ladies, and I always say to the gentlemen, please be open-minded with what I'm going to say, because we live in a very macho, still society, and we like to make people to control. The male energy like to control. And when I say male energy, it could be a female appearance, having a very strong male energy, more than a male would have. So that doesn't matter, the gender. What matters is the energy of that gender. And imagine just when you get married, you are forced to leave your last name. That in vibration mode already your husband take half of you. So you lose half of your power. You give away your power, and then of course your life is never the same after that, because you become submissive. For the gentleman who, in America especially, in America I always love to control their people. And it shows in the names. If you're called Robert, you're not Robert, you're Rob or Bob. Why? You're Robert. Why to sacrifice? Why to cut you in half? Half of you does not exist. If you're Frederic, you're Fred. No, I'm Frederic. I don't want to be cut in half. I want my power, my whole power. I want my power. So have your power back. So I applaud the ladies that now, and you start seeing that more and more due to the influence of South America, and because they keep those ladies that are smart there. I'm kidding. They just, they add they had them. So when you do that, it's great, because you add the person you love, but you don't lose who you are. And I have a lot of good experience. I'm sorry, Larry. I have a lot of experience when I teach that. Sometimes I do talk. I just talk about that because we can go in details, deep in details about that, and it's always very interesting. And the ladies who dare to do that, to come back to their name, or who change their name for whatever reason, because they didn't like their last name because it referred to a grandfather, their father that didn't like, or whatever reason, a negative energy. And they try to get away from that energy, and they created a new name. But how can you create a new name that will be right for you when it comes from a place of negativity? Of course, you will be guided to create a wrong name, and then you will create an imbalance in your life. New things will happen in your life. You may meet new partners who will be evil for you, basically, because it won't be the people you're supposed to meet, or the life you're supposed to live. It won't be the life you're supposed to live. It will be the life that you co-created by yourself from a negativity point of view. But if you don't like your name and you create a new name, if you like your name, but you want still to create a new name because it's better, it sounds better, it's more poetic or whatever, it's okay if it doesn't come from a place of ego, or if you don't take like people who take I become Michelangelo or Michael Archangel. You have some people like that who change the last name with somebody from a very high energy. I mean, why to do that? That's really stupid, you know. And it's even more stupid to fall in the trap of that, because you of course those people are fake. You know, you cannot be real. You cannot be real when you do that. But when you change your name for the singers, for instance, they need a catchy name. But if they still are peaceful in their heart with their own birth name, it's fine. They will be guided to find the right name, and it may be okay for them. But if you change your name because you're not okay with it for whatever reason, the best is to really reject the negativity that you had from that name. Like if it comes from a father, whatever, or a branch of the family that you didn't like, and then you change your name to get away from that. You cannot run away. You know that from my experience, right? You cannot run away. So when you run away from that and you create a new name, it obviously will be a name that will screw your life, because it won't be in alignment with who you are as a soul. It will not be you. It will be somebody else that you created. And it will not be your life. You'll be living the life of somebody that you created. Like you draw a character and you make that character alive in a movie. It won't be you. It will be somebody else. So sometimes all it takes is to come back peaceful to your name, and everything will fall into place again in harmony. And I had that happen to especially the ladies who've done that. They had I received tons of messages, positive messages of their life has been changed thanks to that. So, thank you.
Would you suggest changing if you get divorced, to change your name back to your maiden name then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that definitely. Why would you keep the last name of somebody you're not in alignment anymore? That makes no sense. Yeah, for the children, children are not stupid. You just talk to them as adults, because usually we think children cannot handle things, but they can handle things better than adults if you talk to them face to face, heart to heart. They will get it. They will understand. Don't worry about it.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.